Welcome to the CompassionWorks Way, featuring insightful discussions, inspiring stories, and expert interviews on mental health, building your practice, and personal and professional growth. This show is brought to you by CompassionWorks, your hub for therapists, mental health professionals, and seekers of holistic healing. Your host, Jordan Schaefer, founder of CompassionWorks and licensed EMDR therapist. Together, we'll create a world where compassion and understanding transform lives. CompassionWorks, empowering therapists and transforming lives. Now let's get into the episode. On this episode of the CompassionWorks Way, we'll hear Jordan speak to Amanda Martin. Amanda holds a PhD in family therapy. She's a licensed professional counselor, licensed marriage and family therapist supervisor, and an EMDR-approved consultant for EMDR. Amanda has over 14 years of experience working and specializing with people and families who've experienced trauma, both in residential and outpatient settings. In this episode, Amanda explains to us her journey of going into private practice, leaving a group and community setting, and starting her own practice, and tips she'd advise anyone ready to make the switch. You can learn more about Amanda by visiting our website, CompassionWorks.com, or Amanda's practice website, AmandaMartinCounseling.com.
My dissertation is when, at the same time, I started a small private practice. And a lot of that was for many reasons, but I really wanted to be able to have a little bit more flexibility in my schedule than what agency work, specifically residential work, would allow.
Okay.
So to be able to write, the whole goal was to finish the PhD. I needed time to write the dissertation. And I was able to fly kind of all over Texas to get the data from participants. What I really liked about starting off with agency work is it taught me how to have really good practices for documentation. When you follow up on things, I learned a little bit of marketing. I learned a little bit about, collaborating with other professionals. And so sometimes I feel like if you just go straight into private practice, it can be quite lonely unless you enter into a group practice.
Yeah.
So I liked that I got a lot of those lessons. Then when I transitioned from agency to full-time private practice, I started investing more of my time in also just learning more about being an entrepreneur. And that's something that I didn't get a lot of in my graduate program. There was a course, we had a little book on how to start your private practice, had sample forms, things like that, but not really about how to be an entrepreneur and how do you market yourself, how do you put money back, how do you identify a business plan. And you don't have to have a massive business plan. So I like an organization, it's free, it's called score.org, and it does free mentoring. It will offer help. They have free webinars for people that are starting small businesses. And I thought that was a great resource and I learned a lot. And so they, taught a lot about just even running, like what financial statements do you need to run every month when you're, checking your books. A lot of people don't invest right away in an accountant or a bookkeeper. So I think knowing that kind of stuff, and then when do you check on your business plan? How do you identify the population you want to work with? That really drives, in my opinion, the education you need to continue to get. And I'll always remember one of my professors in my doctoral program, Dr. Jennings, he said something that always resonated with me. He said, the hard part is not getting your PhD, which that part hurt because I felt like it was hard. But he said the hard part is to keep your PhD. You don't just stop learning after you finish. And I really took that to heart. So there is a large part of the budget that I put in every year for me to continue trainings. And I like to really continue to further my knowledge in areas that I have expertise, but also wherever I'm not, just my outcomes could be better, then I want to see what else I need to learn that could pair with what I know to continue to help improve people's experience in counseling, improve their ability to live happy, balanced, healthy lives.
So let's back up. So in grad school, with a master's degree, you started working at an agency.
Yes.
Was that the agency that you practiced, like your first practicum in, or how did you find that agency?
So my first practicum was actually at an advocacy center, working with sexual abuse victims.
Okay.
And then the agency, once I got licensed, was a residential treatment program for children and teens.
Was that then you worked for them, or they were also part of your practicum?
No, that was when I worked for them.
Okay.
So I did my internship all through the advocacy center.
Oh, I see. And then you graduated, and then you started for that agency, and you
Yes.
worked for that agency for how long?
I worked at the first facility.
Oh,
I was there for 3.5 years. And then I worked at the facility when we moved to Houston. I worked at that facility for 8 years.
for how many years?
8.
8 years. Okay.
Yeah.
And during that time, did you have a private practice on the side, or how did that go?
Yes, I went back to doing private practice on the side. I want to say it was more like 2016. So after I had been there for about 4 years, I was in an administrative role for the one in Katy. And that took, a lot of time and a lot of policy writing, things like that. But once I felt like I had a better handle and got the team situated and we were able to get the contracts we needed, things like that, then I really like doing private practice just because outpatient is very different than inpatient. And it's nice to be able to, especially if you're doing inpatient, it's nice to be able to do a little bit of outpatient, nothing to burn yourself out, but just to see that people can take on using tools and show improvement at a much faster rate than what you see with inpatients, which I think
Okay.
is helpful.
So you started seeing people in the evenings, I guess, on weekends. Is that right?
Usually evenings. So I usually didn't do a lot on the weekends.
Did you rent an office, or how did you work that out?
So I did. I actually subletted an office. And so I had a sublease for like 2 days a week. In the evenings, it was, just times that they usually weren't there. And that allowed me to, see a couple people a week. And, I think I didn't take more than like four. I wouldn't do more than like four a week. And then clicked along that way
So
until,
subletting an office, you can, as I recall, you could rent it by the hour, or I guess two
yes.
evenings a week you could rent, or
Yeah. So there's different agreements and you can find different people that do different things. The person that I subleased from let me, I told him kind of what I was looking for and they let me rent it by the hour. So instead of like, here's 2 days a week, here's the fee, where I was paying for it even if I didn't use it. So they allowed me just to pay when I used it. And that was really nice.
and you're in there in someone else's furniture, and that feels weird at first, right?
It was definitely something to get used to. I don't think anybody has the same style, I guess.
Yeah.
But once I was able to get um, some of my resources that I tend to use with people, that felt a little bit more like home. It was a nice building. So I do remember enjoying like the building and kind of where it was located.
How did you get clients then? Well, how did that work?
So I've always just advertised on Psychology Today. I've never had to do just a ton of marketing. I, in my administrative role, we did a lot of public speaking. And so I was known in the community. And a lot of times people would ask if I saw people outside of the residential field or if I recommended people. So it wasn't hard for the small caseload I was initially carrying to keep a client base. But I do market with Psychology Today still. And then I'm also on Andrea's website. And those are the main two that I usually get people either visiting my website and emailing me that way or calling the office. I do pay for a social media marketer now. I don't, I mean, I get a lot of traction on social media as far as like people looking at it, but really as far as people saying that's how they found me, that hasn't been the biggest improvement.
Has been or has not been?
Has not been, but I still think it's important to have a social media presence today. I think that's important for businesses. I think people expect it, and more so than just a website. I think people do kind of feel that that should be out there.
Yeah, somebody described to me a website is like a thumb in the ocean. There are a lot of thumbs in the ocean, so you're just putting another thumb in the ocean, I guess. Well, so you said EMDR, so that's EMDR International Association, and so once you become EMDR trained, then you can join that. And I guess with other associations would be the same way. Find ways to get your name out there. Now, how was the shift from working for an agency as an administrator and to fully going into private practice? What was that like? What'd you do?
So a lot of it just, I had to get organized on what did I want my structure to be? What did I want my client, what's my client base ultimately? And what services did I really want to focus in and do? We were very specific with agency work, like who we would treat, and that was kind of written into our policy. I think a lot of times people in private practice can just take whoever calls. I like to be really thoughtful with people's time and mine and their resources. And if I don't, specialize in an area that they really would benefit from, they don't know, but I should. And I need to get them to, an area that would actually help them instead of try to make mine fit. I like to do, I did, kind of a one-page business plan to help me really target in on what I'm trying to do. And then that helped with developing the website and updating everything, language that I use in marketing, and then how I approach new referrals. Like I said, I just want people there's a limited amount of time and resources that they have. And I want to make sure that they're being really thoughtful with that. They don't have a lot of education in this area, but I do. And I'm responsible for making sure that they're getting what they're asking for.
Yeah, so a couple of things in there. One is the business plan. Let's come back to that. And the other idea is that you qualify your clients, really.
Yes.
That's hard to do. That's scary to do. Well, if you're in private practice and you're needing clients, because that's kind of what's paying the bills, it's hard to turn people away.
I don't see it as turning them away. I do see it as every interaction is helpful. And if you're the one that's able to actually direct them to an area that's helpful, sometimes once they get that need met, they'll come back to you because you were helpful. They remember that. And then what I see is, why are we actually doing this?
Okay.
Am I doing it just to pay the bills? I mean, that's a part, right? But the other part is I want to enjoy my job. I feel that I grow with every client. It's not just them growing. And so the better outcomes I have with them, the more people they're going to tell about, which is, I think, why I don't have to market all, because I just try to be thoughtful. I am client-centered. Some people will come, they'll read about a certain service, and then when they, call and we set up that initial meet, they're not ready for that. Maybe they have some other things that need to be addressed first, or there's another modality that I think would be more appropriate to try first.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to be honest with that. I'm always going to listen. That's my goal, is to hear them and meet them where they're at. But I do feel that if they're coming and asking questions, then I need to give them enough education for them to make thoughtful decisions for themselves.
Informed decisions on what they feel like they need about how they can get out of life. I get people go to counseling because they feel like their life isn't working in some way.
Yes.
And your job, step one, is to help direct them to the resources, you or anybody, or maybe not a person even, that will help them get what they feel like they need. What's the one-page business plan? I mean,
the one-page business plan is something, I learned it on SCORE,
Oh, you
Um,
did? Okay.
yeah. And it really just helps you kind of target what are your values for your business? What's your mission? What is the population that you aim to serve? What are the services that you are going to use to meet that mission? Um, and how do you reach that population? Where are they located? So it's kind of brief, and you can flush it out to lots of people have really large business plans, but it's a really nice starting point for you to think about these things that's kind of outside of your policy and procedure. Um, Policy and procedure, you can describe, these are the services I offer, this is what I charge, these are, methods that I follow to ensure safety, or, how I, follow HIPAA, but it doesn't always incorporate exactly who is your population, how will you market that, what is your mission, and how does that align with your values. And so I think being clear helps kind of set your mind up for, okay, and then this is kind of the next thing that I want to do. So I thought that was a really helpful webinar, and SCORE still offers it for free. And they kind of walk you through answering 8 questions to develop this one-page business plan. I think it's really important to get a couple of mentors.
Yeah. So talk about that. What did that look like?
Well, so I think mentors is really helpful. I do feel that private practice can be kind of lonely, even if you're just in a group practice. Getting everyone to meet up and check in, I think, is important. And that can be different. A lot of group practices, everyone has their own hours, they come and go. But when do you continue to be able to talk about and consult on cases or business questions, marketing, or new leads in different fields? Everybody in our field is oftentimes reading similar but different things, and it's great. You can't cover everything on your own. So I think finding a mentor, a clinical mentor, is really helpful, if not a couple. And then also getting a mentor, an entrepreneurial mentor, right? Someone that is good at finances or growing businesses. I oftentimes find that clinicians aren't super business minded. We're more people. We want to just go out and talk to people, and we assume they're going to pay us because we helped them. And that doesn't always work out. So what do you do, right? Instead of waiting for it to happen and being like, oh no, what do you do? So I think that having a couple of people in your professional cuddle group is from Whitaker. I know you're not a big fan of that, but kind of call it that professional group that you can go and talk to and problem solve and learn and grow together. I think that's really helpful.
How did you meet these people?
Well, I mean,
Finance
I'm a
person.
counselor, so I talk to people all the time. At conferences, yeah. So usually I meet people through conferences, and then you just, I mean,
But a finance person, was that through your husband or through Rotary?
No, actually I met the finance person through SCORE, and also through someone at a conference that was a clinician, and their spouse was an entrepreneur. And so we all went to dinner one night, and then we've just kind of kept up with each other ever since. It was pretty fascinating. And they're an entrepreneur now, but they were in like oil and gas, like completely separate field, but had a lot of stuff that really related. And they were giving their partner a lot of advice that seemed to be helping. So that was fun. But usually I go to a lot of trainings every year. I've got several certifications and licenses, so that requires me to go, but I also enjoy it. And so it gives me an opportunity to meet a lot of different people in different facets of our field. And I just talk to people.
And these are mentors, not coaches. Did you hire a coach?
I've never hired a coach.
Never done that.
No. I've always just found people that we kind of struck up a friendship, and we learned that way.
Okay, well, let's go back to the idea. So you have to first get you had an office you were renting by the hour. At some point you leave the agency. Was that a smooth transition, or just had to happen? Or
I mean, I think it was as smooth as it was going to go. Obviously, being there for as long as I was, it was hard to leave. But I think just, I was just connected, and it was hard to leave. But I definitely needed a better balance for myself. But as far as like moving into private practice full time, that was pretty smooth. I had already was subleasing, and then it had grown into a group of subleasers. And so then we found an office together where we all had our own space. And so then we kind of just all met whenever we saw each other. And then I still had all my colleagues that I met with anyway. And then after the pandemic, our building sold that we were in, and so we had to find new space, and just some people's life situations changed. They were taking care of family members, or they were going to move out of state, so we all kind of split up and got our own space at that point.
Well, there's before the pandemic and after the pandemic, right, and during the pandemic. So
Yeah.
Yeah. So sounds like, or it was organic, that kind of came together just naturally. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah.
Now, didn't you work with a psychiatrist, or I guess with one or for one? Was that part of it?
I worked with one for several years.
Okay.
And I contracted with his office for a day a week, and he was I was referred to him from one of my other friends that was a psychiatrist that used to work with us at the facility, and it was a wonderful experience. The traffic picked up when people went to work last year, so that contract ended beginning of this year.
I see.
We still keep in touch and refer to each other, but getting down there became a lot harder. There's one highway to get there, but yeah, no, that was a wonderful experience. And I think when you're going to be in private practice, you need to know your community. You need to be able to provide referrals to people outside of just yourself. And you need to be able to provide referrals outside of just other counselors. There are other services that people may need. And so knowing your community, meeting people in your community, and forming relationships with people in your community for you to be able to provide those trusted referrals, I think is helpful.
Yeah, you're really a socially oriented person, I think. Would you recommend somebody to go find a psychiatrist to contract with, or to get to know or work with, or is that for you? It's more natural. You just meet these people, I guess, or was referred by a colleague at the agency. Is that something somebody starting out new should do, though, is to go find them a psychiatrist to be buddies with?
I think if you're starting out new and you have the opportunity to work with a psychiatrist, and you're not afraid, because people that are typically going to a psychiatrist can have a little bit more going on, right? And there can be medication complications, things like that. Now, I was used to facility work, so I was definitely familiar with working with the team and a medical. So to me, it was fine. I was used to it. But I do think that anytime you're able to work with a psychiatrist, a chiropractor, anybody in the medical field, you are going to get more referrals. A lot of people will start medical before they go into mental health. And so when you're working with a medical provider, they oftentimes will refer to you when things quicker, when things are not improving as much, or they can pair it with the treatment. So I think if you're worried about how do I market myself, how do I get enough referrals, contracting, as a contract employee, or just subleasing out of the same office, I think can be really helpful to build your practice, but also to give you someone to work with that can teach you a lot about their side of the field and how do those pair together well.
Do you go to networking meetings? Your light flickered again.
I know it doesn't.
Got to move around more.
Yes, I do. So I did go to networking meetings for a while in the community, for a couple of years when I had the availability to do it. There is a local counseling office that would put on CEs every month for like an hour and a half. And it was a great way to kind of meet other clinicians in the community, a lot of new up and coming clinicians in the community. I did it more when I was at the facility because we were often looking to hire, and that was a great place to meet people that would be
Oh,
looking.
oh, oh, oh.
So in private practice, I don't go as much, but what I do in private practice that still puts me kind of out and about in that capacity is I will do um, educational meetings. So I can do that with private schools. I can do that with sports leagues, usually, junior high, high school level. I can do that with other areas like occupational therapy, things like that, where I can go in and talk about how do you help with teen anxiety? How do you deal with kids that have ADD, ADHD? What are some things that you can do? How do you explore these things? How do you support them in different environments? Things like that. And so you can go and just talk about those things. I typically don't charge. I think some people do. But usually when I go, it's not a large part of my time. These are all topics that I think is just really good to give back to the community and give more information on. And then that will generate referrals as well with those agencies.
Yeah, it can. Well, and there's really, as I think about there is networking with other mental health professionals, right? But there was a time in Plano when there was a Chamber of Commerce networking group, which was really, for me, very uncomfortable, but I did go do it a few times, to where you do your 1 minute warning or whatever it is,
Elevator speech.
elevator speech. That's
Yes.
it. But there would be, I don't know, 60, 100 people there. So, it took all morning. But people would get to know each other and, refer to each other for different kinds of businesses. So that's one kind. And then the other kind is meeting other colleagues. And did you just meet other colleagues, it sounds like, and then you would go out in the community and give talks?
I would meet other colleagues. I would do some of the local CEs networking. I knew a lot of the community outreach specialists through the local psychiatric hospitals just from my work at the facility. And I also, I would reach out to some of the private schools and charter schools as well, just to let them know kind of what services I offered, and if they had anybody that was interested, here's where they could get information from my website or call me. And again, I would really look at areas. Local sports leagues would be ones that I would reach out to and just let them know that I do peak performance as well. I think some people don't know what's available, and sometimes just letting them know, hey, this is offered, then they start to think like, oh yeah, I think this would be helpful, or that might, when something comes up later, they can remember. So I do some of that. And again, I think it's also just good to let people know in your community that you're here. I've had other people reach back out and they'll ask me the business to sponsor something, and that's fine. I think it's good to give back. We did, when I was at the facility, we did do the Chamber of Commerce, and it was helpful.
Oh, you did?
With many things. Even that was a nonprofit organization that I worked for. And so that was also really helpful in getting connections for donations, grants, things like that.
But as a private practice therapist, you really don't do those kind of things.
I don't
Chamber of
anymore.
Commerce.
Yeah, I think in the beginning, I think you should, if someone is starting out and they have the time.
Okay, here you go. Yeah.
I think it's really good for them to try all these things. Every community is different, and how you're going to connect with that community and meet the people that will refer to you, you need to go try all these things. And then you're going to figure out what works.
Because I had the idea, well, I got to do the right thing or just do it, and then they're all going to come flowing in. And you're really saying, well, who knows what's going to really connect? And really, oh, this is good. The journey is, how does that work? The journey is the destination. So instead of thinking I'm going to go there and this is going to come back, the destination is being in that experience in that moment. Maybe that's what's different for you, right? You like being with people, talking to them, kind of just learning in that moment what they're about.
Yeah. Well, you never know who you're going to meet. And it could be an amazing experience, right? Someone that didn't even plan on being there that day could, be someone that becomes a part of your community and someone you stay in contact with for a really long time. So you never know. There's always opportunity. And it gives you another opportunity to really practice what is your elevator speech? How do you market what you stand for? How do you market what your services are? How do you explain to people how it's helpful? A lot of times when we're not sure, we go back to like what we were taught in school, and it's heavy language, usually way over people's head. And so how do you start saying this and using language that other people can understand that didn't get the same degree as you?
Yeah, I want to double back. Just when you worked with medical professionals, like doctors, I guess, and do you feel like having a PhD made a big difference for you, or would you know?
I don't know. I
Doctors
mean,
like to refer to doctors, or you don't have a sense of that?
I think I was oftentimes complimented on my education as far as my degrees. Um, so maybe it had an initial impact on the first impression. What I really felt like is important is to have a very collaborative approach to treatment.
That's
And
important.
I really
Collaborative
felt like that was
approach.
the biggest thing. I was there
Mhm.
to help our client and to
Hmm.
work with everybody and learn from everybody. And I really didn't approach it as anybody's opinion was better than anybody else's. And I was not here to tell anybody else how to do their portion. Just how do we all work together and see what's helpful so we can help our client. And that's where I saw from other experiences where if people felt like they were being told what to do, that you would see some defensiveness come up, whether they were or not actually being told to do. That depends on that situation, but having a really collaborative mindset, that's really what I felt helped most.
Okay, so now if we just wrap it up, you were trying to, and I interrupted, I think, but basically, tip number one would be to get a business plan. Number two would be to try just lots of different ways to connect with people in the community. You're big on clarity. This is clear to me. You're big on being clear on what your intention is, seems.
Yes, I always kind of stick to that. You need to get organized. And when you're organized, then you can be more clear, you can be transparent, and you can be thoughtful about what direction you're going.
Okay.
And I think sometimes with new clinicians too, they have a tendency to want to do it all. Having a plan helps you kind of start adding in steps. You're not going to be able to do all the things you want to do right up front really, really well. So start with one that you think is going to be most helpful or that you have the most experience in,
Or the most
or it's the
interest in.
easiest to do, right? Whatever. And then build upon that. And then you can update your business plan every year. You can go back and revisit it every 3 months to see where you're at as you can continue to build out and eventually get to that space where you're like, man, I'm going to do all these things. And this is my population. These are all the services that I offer now.
Well, how do you look at it though? There's what's needed, right? What I know about and what I'm really interested in.
Mhm.
And I guess you can develop any one of those areas. In other words, if there's a certain need in the community, you can, work to fulfilling that need. On the other hand, you might have your own personal interest, whatever it might be, intuitive eating or whatever, and then fulfill that to follow that interest. And maybe they match up. I don't know. How would you approach that? How did you approach that?
So I like to build from strength. I feel that sometimes when you start with something, you can identify a need in the community, and then what do you know about that? And usually, if you're driven to kind of fill that need, you already know something about it. And I think that's important because you need to have some confidence that you can do this. If you don't, and it's hard to sell someone a product that you don't feel confident yourself about doing. So you want to start with what you already have a little bit of a knowledge base in, and then what's the need in the community that you can fill. And then through that process, you may know initially, but you will also learn about other things. And you can start kind of adding that to your list of priorities of how do you want to grow professionally in these other areas that you think will help your clients. And then you can start adding that to your budget for getting additional education. And then that will expand into a larger population of clients that you can serve as well. And also getting to know more people in those different communities for marketing and referrals. I will say that I think if you're going to be a clinician today, you need to be able to have some education in dealing with trauma. If you didn't get that in school, you need to do some extra training on that, how trauma responses in the body. So I'm not set on you have to do this modality or this modality. I think there's a lot of amazing modalities and theories out there, but I do think you need to learn how to do that. And you need to get some education on the brain and nutrition. You need to be able to help identify when people have not seen a doctor in 5 years and they don't know that they need to. How do you know that this isn't something with your adrenal system that needs to be addressed and you're continuing to treat it from a different method? So I think those are the 3 areas that if you don't have training in, you should get them.
What are they? 3? 1?
So 1 is trauma. You need to have experience in trauma.
2?
The body. How does trauma respond in the body?
3?
Okay, so something with somatic. 3, nutrition in the brain.
Okay. So we're going to go into that the next time we meet.
Okay.
I think we covered this area very well on how to get started in counseling business. And you're available. Are you on LinkedIn? Are you on LinkedIn?
I am on LinkedIn. I am on LinkedIn. The majors, the 2 areas that are typically where people find me is either on Instagram or Facebook.
Amanda Martin
Counseling.
Okay, Amanda Martin Counseling. Okay. All right. Well, let's wrap up there, and let's meet again and talk about the areas of interest that people can develop.